All right, so to pick up where we left off with, remember we have three major economic regions of the United States from this time period of 1800 to 1840. In the South, we have a primarily cash crop industry based on either rice, indigo, tobacco, cotton. That was the big one, the king cotton industry, which then connected with the North, where we have industry and factories. And then in the West, we have the agrarian lifestyle, the breadbasket, if you will, for the United States. And all three of these are going to be tied together in that American system that Henry Clay promotes. However, there's going to be a little friction and tension in this with the northern economy, the northern industry, where these tariffs are going to be put in place in the American system to help promote American industry in the north. And the south and the west are not going to be a fan of these tariffs that make their products more expensive. And we're going to see how that kind of plays a bigger role when it comes to the Jacksonian era with the role of tariffs and state governments. So if you remember all the way back to the Washington presidency, there was a big hubbub on whether or not there should be a national bank. We talked about the Federalist Party led by Hamilton, who was a strong supporter of the national bank to kind of regulate the economy and to help promote industry, while the Democrat Republicans led by Thomas Jefferson was vehemently opposed to a national bank because they thought that it gave too much power to the federal government. Well, during this time period, because if you remember that Thomas Jefferson actually let the first bank run out. He just kind of never renewed it where the charter ran out, so the first bank collapses. Well, under the American system, Henry Clay is going to create a second national bank to provide federal money for regulation and investments to help kind of spur this economic growth in the new country. And the purpose of this bank in Henry Clay's system is going to basically be a piggy bank for the states, where they can come in and they can borrow money, they can be loaned money to create new roads, new bridges, new canals, whatever they need to create a better system for transportation to kind of increase their economy here in the 1820s, 1830s. And if you look here at the map, you can see that under Clay's system provided all sorts of transportation routes, whether it was roads, canals, eventually railroads, as far as ways to kind of get goods, whether finished or unfinished, to the different places to either be sold or bought. And it's going to connect those three systems or those three economies of the North, South, and West a lot more efficiently. And before this system was created, if you were a farmer, let's say in St. Louis, or if you were a merchant or whomever, where you had to buy or sell goods, you were able to use waterways, particularly rivers. You could just follow the Mississippi River all the way south to where streams out in the Gulf of Mexico near New Orleans, and that's how you would trade your goods. However, if you were a farmer from the west, there was no way to get your goods to the east. And this is where Henry Clay's system is going to come in, where private companies are going to create roads and especially canals. And these canals here, especially from Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, are going to connect New York to the Midwest. That allows for so much more shipping and so much more trade, again, between that of New York City, with the Erie Canal here, to get all the way to Buffalo, and then also to get to places like Cleveland or Toledo or Chicago to allow for the traders and the farmers to buy and sell goods. And this Erie Canal is going to bring in so much extra trade for the New York City mercantilist system that they're able to really become the trade hub for the United States, where the majority of trade is happening for Americans. And as the Industrial Revolution continues to thrive, as new inventions start to be used or start to be created, they're going to be used here in the United States. And with these rivers or with these canals, things like the steamboat are going to tremendously reduce the cost and time of shipping to allow for companies or to allow for farms to make much more profit off of their goods. And this map does a really good job of showing that comparison between the start of the 19th century versus kind of where we're talking about now with this market revolution, where just in the travel time from New York City, let's say you're trying to trade your goods all the way from New York to, let's say, St. Louis here, right on the cusp of the Mississippi River. If we looked in 1800, that's going to take you about 6 weeks or more, 5 to 6 weeks to get all the way out here to the Mississippi River. However, with the new technology, like with the steamboat and the canal systems that are now created, you can get there in about 2 weeks, which cuts down on travel time dramatically. And you can see where farmers are able to increase their profits by almost double, almost 100%, or they're able to increase profits, which does help out on the economic scale. You can see here the costs of transportation goes down dramatically as far as how much they're paying per mile for these routes. And again, much like with the steamboat, we see that as technology improves, so does the economic powerhouse of the United States. And railroads are going to be a huge part in that, building up until the Civil War. And when we get to the Civil War, we even talk about how the railroads were able to really single-handedly help out the Union Army over the Confederacy Army, because you can see the development of so many more railroads here for transportation and goods and so forth in the North than they had in the South. By the 1860s, these railroads were the most dominant means of transportation that producers and consumers would use to get goods from one part of the country to the other. So really, to kind of end this and kind of transition us now, we'll get into the Jacksonian democracy in our next lesson. But this impact of the Industrial Revolution is really going to kind of bring this new set of economics to America. It's going to really dramatically change the economies of the North. It's going to help Henry Clay's American system by connecting the North with the West and the South. And if we go back and look at our essential question from the beginning with how did the development of regional economies and Clay's system really kind of transition this national economy, well, we'd say that it would really kind of bring all of them together, whether we're talking about the North, the South, and the West, instead of them being isolated, keeping them separate from each other, where there's not much interaction together, the transportation is very difficult. This new American system is going to allow for trade, transportation, allowing for each area of the country to kind of play a pivotal role in the development of the entire nation, and it's allowing for the economic production on a very, very large scale to compete with the rest of the world. The Frances of the world, or the Spains of the world, or the Englands of the world. This allows for those countries, or for our country, to be able to compete with those European powerhouses. All right. Well, guys, I hope that you come in tomorrow with some questions ready to go, and we will continue to discuss the role that the market economy or the market revolution played on the United States, and also transition now into a Jacksonian democracy.